Did you know that sleep consumes about one third of your life? And for good reason, right? There's definitely some essential things that we need from sleep, not just from the physical standpoint, but from the mental standpoint, the emotional standpoint, and how important it is to get enough sleep to actually be able to function.
Hey everyone, this is Aaron and Juwon, and you're listening to Wellness for Real People. This show is for people who are on the go, busy, and looking for ways to live their best lives. We focus on wellness topics in mindfulness, exercise, diet, and sleep, and share quick, actionable tactics to improve your health and wellness. We're not perfect, but we're trying to get a little better each day. Let's grow on this journey together.
Function. So today we're talking about 4 ways poor sleep affects your immune system, something that's very critical and very important. Something we don't often think about. It's like, I don't know about you, but it come from an era where it's like, you don't sleep, you work hard, you keep doing whatever you have to do, and you grind it out. And if you lose sleep, maybe that's just a thing that's cultural here in the United States, but it's one of those things where it's like, you're rewarded for working harder and sleeping less in a lot of senses. But what happens on the back end of that is your immune system is taking a hit. And have you ever like felt good one day and then woke up the next day after having a long day and just feeling like absolutely wrecked? Like, I don't know about you, but I know I have. And it's one of those things where the immune system is so tied to the quality of sleep. Something that we learned about in this article in particular, that we want to talk about. So we're discussing an article from UC Health Today, all around how sleep can actually improve your immune system, and then some of the negative effects that happen as a result of sleep deprivation. So we're going to talk a little bit about those. Juwon, wanted to give you a chance to respond to see if you had any quick takes before we dive into those 4 ways that sleep impacts your immune system.
I think you hit the nail on the head with it. I think it's just fascinating how interconnected some of these things are.
Mm,
And
yeah.
like you said, one of those when you get busy, sleep is often the first thing to go.
Yep.
But you're gonna pay for it if you don't take care of your sleep for too long. So obviously, there's times when you think you just can't always have a perfect night's sleep, and life happens, right? But just trying to make a habit of getting the proper and adequate amount of rest can do wonders for our health. I think there's a big one of the big takeaways for me.
Nice. No, same, man. So the first thing they bring up is number one, the lack of sleep makes you more susceptible to common illnesses. So when you don't sleep, your body tends to produce fewer antibodies. The proteins that identify foreign invaders to be destroyed are those antibodies. And when your antibodies are low, bacteria, viruses, and toxins are more likely to slip by into your immune system. So, like I mentioned, those days are like series of days you're not getting sleep, and then you realize all of a sudden you're sick, but you haven't had any interactions with sick people necessarily, or situations where you're like compromised and like you're like, but you just feel sick, and because those like things that you've been exposed to previously might be slipping by. So in the article they say research suggests that adults who regularly get 5 hours or less of sleep are more likely to develop respiratory infections, which is crazy in this day and age. Like, you definitely want to be careful of that. Adolescents who get only 6 hours of sleep are at increased risks of common illnesses like the cold, influenza, and gastroenteritis. So one of the big things they call out there. They also talk about if you have a sleep disorder, which is commonly associated with poor sleep, you might also be increased at risk of certain illnesses. You might be likely to develop the herpes zoster virus, which can lead to chickenpox and shingles and stuff like that. I think I seen an article recently where somebody that was actually younger had shingles, and I thought that was something that only impacted older adults. But even thinking about older adults, you're getting less sleep, you're more likely to get, or to catch either of those diseases, which is crazy. But
Yeah, yeah,
like, it's very real. It's very
yeah,
real. So yeah,
yeah. You know, one really example of that really stands out to me is when my little one was like a baby,
yeah,
right? And you're in those newborn stages,
right.
before the kiddo gets sleep trained and gets on a proper routine and just, not getting any sleep whatsoever. and that's where I really start to see this connection between sleep and my immune system, because I'm not getting any sleep, and then to compound that, then I'm not feeling well, I'm exhausted, and then lo and behold, I get sick, and then when the kid gets into daycare, oh gosh, forget about it, right? That's a whole other situation.
Yes.
3 years around a rotating carousel of sickness in my house, and so like you said, we're just there's like all sorts of things around us, and whether we notice them or not, and our body is doing its best to try to protect us against these things. But when we don't have the sleep, like you said, we don't have those antibodies. They can't work as effectively, and some things like slip through the cracks, and that's how we end up getting getting more sick more often. So another way that sleep can affect our immune function, which I thought is pretty shocking. In the short term, you may just get a common cold, but in the long term, it puts us at risk for far more serious conditions. So a chronic lack of sleep can increase your risk for cardiovascular and metabolic disorders. It says that inflammation is your immune system's protective response to injury and infection.
Yeah.
And so this involves the use of white blood cells to help eliminate threats and initiate healing. And so while inflammation in response to an acute threat is protective, ongoing or chronic inflammation in the body can damage those cells and increase our risk for disease. So when we don't get enough sleep, it generates more inflammatory cytokines. I don't know if I pronounced that correctly. I don't know. I'm not a scientist yet.
Right, sure.
Or cytokines, whatever. Which can lead to a chronic inflammatory state and increase your risk for inflammatory fueled diseases, such as autoimmune diseases like rheumatoid arthritis, cardiometabolic diseases such as hypertension or high blood pressure, and type 2 diabetes, and neurodegenerative diseases such as multiple sclerosis and Parkinson's disease. So those are some very serious conditions. Yeah. And I don't know if we always make the link between, let me just get a little shut eye, and the power and the importance of prioritizing our sleep to help protect and try to prevent or minimize the risk of getting these more very serious conditions later on down the road.
Yeah, man. And then the third one says that this lack of sleep also reduces your antibody response to vaccines, which is kind of interesting because, as we've been going through a lot of things, over a while, like one of the big call outs here in the article is that just as sleep helps your brain to retain memories, it also supports your immune memory. So your immune system needs that downtime to help it remember, recognize, and react to harmful anti-agents. And according to the National Sleep Foundation, getting enough sleep before and after a vaccination can help that vaccination work better for your body. Sleep allows the immune system to register the antigen introduced through the vaccine. So as we're, in this phase where there's lots of stuff being introduced into, our lives and things that we're trying to fight, sleep is even more important than ever for when those things happen. And if you're as we get into like cold and flu season, that's even more important if you're getting vaccinations for whatever you might be getting vaccinations for. Remember that sleep consistency is also key in that process. And there's no way to really make up for that. So the article says even trying to make up for a week of poor sleep with more sleep. So let's say you didn't sleep well, but you're trying to take more naps down the road. I'm not feeling good. Now I'm suddenly trying to take more naps. That does not necessarily count and help to add up to it. So it's really about those consistent habits ahead of it. According to the CDC, even if you double sleep within that next week, your body still may not respond well to vaccines. So as we get into that phase of we're getting in cold flu season or wherever we may be and we're taking vaccines, making sure that we sleep is essential. And they say, in fact, your antibody production following a flu vaccine may be 50% lower than that of someone who got the recommended amount of sleep in both weeks. So it's saying even if you just get the sleep and you didn't take it, you might be in a better situation than if you took the vaccine and didn't get the sleep. So something really, really interesting that I didn't know about until reading this article.
Yeah, fascinating.
Yeah.
Okay, I gotta be a bearer of bad news one more time.
This is the whole article. Is that it's literally that. But we're gonna give you some good stuff too.
Yeah. Yes. So we'll talk about in the end some positive tips we can do. But Um, if you weren't already scared enough about not getting enough sleep, number four, chronic sleep deprivation can increase your risk for cancer. So, cancer can develop if your immune system is unable to destroy infected and diseased cells before they grow and spread. So, to fight diseases such as cancer, the immune system relies on NK cells, which is a type of white blood cell. And the CDC reports that just one night of really poor sleep, 4 hours or less, can significantly reduce NK cell activity. NK cells aren't functioning at full capacity, are associated with 1.6 times greater risk of dying from cancer. Enough said there. I mean, that's
Yeah,
pretty
that's,
shocking stuff.
yeah, it's rough. But yeah, that highlights the importance of this article, and something we're working on as individuals is trying to figure that out. So the lesson here: prioritize your sleep to support your immune system is the main takeaway. The article offers some tips to improve sleep, which we'll link to in the show notes, but some quick highlights. I'll take the first two, Juwon, if you want to cover the last two. Cut out habits that disrupt sleep. That's things like technology in bed, as we've talked about in previous episodes. It's hard to do, but like getting off your phone at night is one of the biggest things. And it's like, even if you use the nighttime modes and things like that, it can still disrupt your sleep. Consuming sugar, you want a late night dessert, not necessarily good for sleep. If you can avoid that, alcohol and caffeine, definitely don't drink a coffee at night. Like, those are the things that can definitely disrupt your sleep. And especially with alcohol, we talked about this before, but you might fall asleep quickly with a nightcap or whatever, but you typically wake up throughout the night, or that sleep isn't as high quality.
Yeah, yeah. And I'll add to that, I've learned that getting a good night's sleep for me personally
Yeah.
starts like 3 to 4 hours prior. Right.
Yeah.
So
The
I
winding.
realized,
Yeah.
yeah, exactly. Yeah. So
Yep.
I need to eat breakfast at least, sorry, dinner at least 3 to 4 hours before I go to bed.
Smart.
Give my body enough time to start digesting that stuff so that I'm not trying to digest it while I'm sleeping. Because if I eat like right before I go to bed, I get terrible. It's like I get terrible sleep.
Yep.
If I have my phone, like you mentioned, in bed, and I'm scrolling for a long time before I go to bed, and if I eat a late dinner, that is a surefire recipe to get terrible sleep that night. So
It's like the worst, man. It's like you didn't go out and do anything. You just hit your house. It's like I might have well went out and partied all night if I'm
right,
going to have this kind of result.
exactly.
Yeah, it's crazy. It's
Yeah.
crazy.
So I think everybody's body's a little bit different. You got to listen to what your body responds to. But I think that first piece you mentioned is really important, right? Figure out the habits that disrupt your sleep, and make sure that you don't engage in those things, so you can give yourself the best chance possible to get the quality rest.
Yeah. And then the second one is pay attention to your environment, making sure it's dark, cool, and distraction free. I think about distraction free is like not having the TV on, not having lights on, like not having any kind of like just things that could potentially disrupt you. I don't know about you, Juwan. It's a little bit harder now. My daughter's getting older. Like yesterday, she decided to just come into our room for whatever reason. It was like, just go to bed. Like, what are you doing? She came in and woke us up. But as much as you can, try to like really protect that environment and control that as much as possible. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. That another way to prioritize sleep is to set a bedtime and a wake time. Make sure you're getting the full amount of recommended sleep every night. Again, everybody's a little bit different in
Right.
terms of the amount that you need. From a general rule of thumb from this article, they said about 7 hours, right? So take that with a grain of salt. Some
Totally.
people need more, some people need a little bit less. But certainly, if you're getting, less, consistently getting, less than 4 hours of sleep, 5 hours of sleep, you may need to take a look at that over the long term. So setting a consistent bedtime and wake time can help us try to, regulate that, regulate our circadian rhythm, get into that kind of flow state to make sure that we're getting the full amount that we need for our immune system to be able to function properly. And the last piece here is see a healthcare provider to address any chronic or severe sleeping issues or disorders. I think
Yeah.
that's really important. We've talked about that before, but can never underscore the importance of knowing your numbers and being in touch and connected with your healthcare team. For a lot of people, undiagnosed sleep apnea can, as we've talked about, put us at risk of other conditions like prediabetes or diabetes, right? And you may think it has related to what you're eating or some of these other factors, and it may just be completely, mostly driven by your inability to get the proper rest that you may need, right? And so all of these things are interconnected, and it's very important that we're aware of what we're feeling and experiencing, and relying on that connection with our healthcare providers to provide the support that we need to be as healthy and as possible.
And I'd say, like, from a personal standpoint, like just working with my healthcare provider, getting a sleep study test is pretty easy now. Like, if you go to your provider, kind of discuss the challenges and issues that you had, they could typically order an at-home kit for you, so that's something that's easy to follow. Something that was super beneficial for me and something I'm still working through, but very, very beneficial in the sense that I can actually understand what's going on and then bring that back to the provider to say, here's what we saw, here's what the results were, and then they can prescribe a plan going forward. And there's lots and lots and lots of different ways to manage that. So we're not going to get into that here, but something that's like not as scary or intimidating as you might think. And it's just a simple question saying, hey, I'm having some trouble sleeping. What do you recommend? And then they might dive into that for you. So yeah.
Absolutely. So again, another great article. As you mentioned, Aaron, we'll link to it in the show notes. Hope this was really helpful. We'll be back soon with another episode of Wellness for Real People. But in the meantime, take care.